Hello, my name is Jacqueline. I am a corporate flight attendant and welcome to my channel, Jacqueline Travels. Today, we are gonna be talking about some FA terms, and if you're not familiar with what an FA is, FA stands for flight attendant. That's what the entire video is about today. Pilots and flight attendants generally have their own way of speaking in the aviation industry, so I'm gonna share with you 20 of the most commonly used terms that you may have heard if you have ever been on an airplane or overheard flight crew talking about any part of their day in an airport. Before we get into this video, I am really excited to tell you that this video is brought to you by Teami. I am a Teami partner. They are sponsoring this video. Thank you guys very much for doing so. I have been drinking the Greens Superfood blend for over a month now. I'm almost done with it. I've already ordered more because that's how much I've been loving it. I'll show you how I make it. I'm really enjoying the matcha iced. I just take my Teami tumbler and fill it with ice water, and then I do 1 scoop of my greens, which I am almost done with, but I did order more just because I've been loving how I'm feeling, how much energy I have. The taste is really good. It's so easy. I can't wait to take it on the road with me. Bam, 16 superfoods in like 10 seconds. The Greens blend has ceremonial grade matcha powder. There's wheatgrass, spirulina, broccoli powder, acai berry. There is kale, kelp, celery powder, everything that's good for you. Plus, it's vegan, non-GMO. There's no soy, no dairy, no gluten, no nuts, and no added sugar. And I don't think I showed you guys last time I had this, but this blue part on the bottom comes off. So if I ever work a turn, I actually don't have to bring that case with me. I can store my powder right here in the tumbler. Let me show you. It just screws right off. It's enough for a scoop or 2. And then you put your tumbler right back in and you're all set and ready to go. So the best part about it is once my greens are made, I just carry it around in this tumbler. It happens to match me today. I love a good color coordination, but now I'm carrying 16 superfoods with me. I don't have to go out of my way and eat salads all day or incorporate some greens into my breakfast just to make sure I'm meeting my daily nutritional goals. And I've got to say, this has matcha in it, but my energy levels have been so much better. I don't have that afternoon slump that I generally get if I'm drinking coffee. I do my coffee in the morning and I do my matcha greens in the afternoon. And I don't have that fatigue feeling or coming down feeling or that crash. I just generally feel so much better. So if you are interested in trying this for yourself, I do have a great discount code for you. It is JackTravels25 and that will get you 25% off of your order. So you can get this tub, it's over a month's supply for less than $1 a day. Actually, it's gonna be less than $23 for the entire month after using that code JackTravels25. So I'll post that down below for you. Once you get it and you've tried it, let me know how much you guys are loving it. I hope you love it as much as I do. All right, now getting into the FA Speak video. I wanted to make this video because I realize when I'm talking to you guys about my job as a corporate flight attendant, or even if I'm typing up a description, I catch myself saying these flight attendant terms that we're used to, or their acronyms, or their terms that the general public just probably wouldn't use in their everyday life. And I realize that I have to explain these things to you. So that's what this video is for. But also more importantly, these terms can help anyone who will eventually attend a flight attendant training. I've let you guys know before you start flight attendant training, you get a thick old packet of information that you need to memorize before class even starts. So some of this information is on there, or if you're just new to aviation, some of this information will help you kind of have that dynamic with pilots or other flight attendants when you're talking about the job of a flight attendant. I know that flight attendant positions have been hard to come by. I have personally not flown since March, but I do have good news. I don't want to jinx anything. Maybe I'm flying next week. Something's been put on the schedule, but it's not set in stone. But what I'm trying to say is aviation is coming back. A lot of my friends are flying again. A lot of corporate flight attendants I know are able to get contract trips, or the furlough has expired and they're working for their companies again. So hang in there. I know I let you guys know that all the time. When it's a good time to start training for aviation, if you want to be a corporate flight attendant, I will certainly let you know when you should pull the trigger on doing that. And if you want to be a commercial flight attendant, just this video and these 20 terms are something that can definitely help you in your commercial flight attendant career. All right, now's the time. Let's get into these 20 terms that you may have heard flight attendants say. The first thing, if you've ever flown on a commercial airplane, you have heard the flight attendants come over the PA system and say, arm the doors and cross-check. So basically what you are doing when you are arming the door is you are attaching the slide pack to the airplane door. It lets the airplane know there are passengers on board. If we open the doors when the doors are armed, the slides, the evacuation slides, are going to automatically engage and passengers will have a way to evacuate the aircraft. What cross-check means is there is another flight attendant who, after arming their doors, goes and checks on your doors to make sure they are properly armed. After all the passengers are on board and the main cabin door is closed, flight attendants will arm all the doors. If there's an emergency situation, you guys have an easy way off of the airplane. And then when you land, you'll hear disarm doors and perform cross-check. Disarming the doors is taking the slide pack off of the airplane doors and putting them away. This way, when you open the airplane door, you don't accidentally blow a slide, because that means the airplane is then out of commission. It's a very expensive thing to have to repack a slide, and no one wants to be the flight attendant who blows a slide. Another flight attendant term, or pilot term in this case, that you may have heard before is a slam clicker. And this applies to being a corporate flight attendant or a commercial flight attendant or a corporate pilot or a commercial pilot. But a slam clicker is basically a crew member who gets to the hotel on their layover and they slam the hotel door and they click the little deadbolt to secure themselves in. Slam clickers don't want to participate in any crew activity when they're on their layovers. They're just tired, and that's understandable because any career in aviation can be exhausting. So a slam clicker gets to their hotel and they spend their time in their hotel room. They're not exploring new cities. They're not meeting you downstairs in the hotel bar for a little crew debrief. They just want their quiet time. And I have been guilty of being a slam clicker in the past, especially when I was a commercial flight attendant, because I used to work so many hours and I did a ton of red-eye flying. So I was just always tired, and sometimes my layovers were short and I just wanted to slam click and be left alone and like be on the road and not have to worry about anything. So I don't think slam click is always a negative term. It's just a term that I like to apply to myself in my flight attendant career when I need a little bit of downtime. All right, number 3, a term you may have heard is senior mama. And a senior mama is just the most senior crew member, the most senior flight attendant in your group of flight attendants who you're flying with. So this really applies to the commercial flight attendants, because generally as a corporate flight attendant, you're the only flight attendant on board that private jet. But when you're a commercial flight attendant, you usually have a crew, a minimum of 3 flight attendants, and it can go up to 10 plus flight attendants. The senior mamas are the girls who have been there for a long time. They're able to bid for the best trips because they put their time and their work into the company. They're senior enough to hold all of the good trips. There's also jokes that you could tell who the senior mamas are because they start to be a little bit more relaxed with the uniform guidelines. They figure they've been there long enough. If they want to break a little fashion rule, they break a little fashion rule. Or they have the shortest flight attendant high heels or just flats. So that's what the senior mama is, the most senior flight attendant on the crew. All right, number 4, deadhead. I've talked to you guys about deadheading before. I don't often have to deadhead for my job as a corporate flight attendant. Generally, my plane starts in the city I live in and it ends in the city I live in. But sometimes I do need to start work. Maybe we'll just say Florida because I do frequent Florida all the time. So since I don't live in Florida, I have to deadhead to Florida. And basically what that means is you're just repositioning yourself to start a trip or to end a trip or to pick up a trip. So a deadheading flight crew could be either pilots or flight attendants. And some examples of why you might have to deadhead is if you're working and you have a mechanical on your airplane and you're not going to be able to get the plane repaired that night. Crew scheduling can either decide to let you lay over in the city that your plane broke down in, or they can deadhead you home back to base. So if you're a commercial flight attendant and there is another airplane that happens to be in the city that your plane broke down in, you can hop on your airline and fly back to base, or they can deadhead you on another airline. It's not a pleasant sounding term, but I do remember when I was a commercial flight attendant, I used to love to deadhead because you would get paid your flight hours basically for flying as a passenger. And you could choose to fly in your uniform, or you could change out of your uniform, and you got the most peace and quiet on the airplane if you were in your civilian clothes, not your flight attendant clothes. Just because when passengers are wondering, why is there a flight attendant sitting next to me like falling asleep on this flight? Shouldn't she be working? So if you ever see that, it's probably a flight attendant who is either commuting to work or they're deadheading. It's not a flight attendant on shift working your flight who's choosing to have a nap. All right, our number 5 term is called a RON. So when I used to work my late night flights, I would ask the gate agents who pulled the jet bridge up to the plane if the airplane was a RON. So that means it's an airplane that is remaining overnight. So if the airplane was a RON, you didn't have to worry about cleaning it up or getting the airplane ready for the next group of passengers. You knew the airplane was staying overnight. The overnight cleaning crew would clean the airplane and you were free to go do your flight attendant thing. If you ever hear gate agents talking about a RON or passengers saying, no, this flight is a RON, it means it's remaining overnight. It's not going anywhere else. The airplane's getting its downtime and the flight crew is getting its downtime. My next term is open time. Now, this is probably not a term that you would be familiar with unless you had a friend in the airline industry who was talking about their schedule. So what open time means, and it's the same for flight attendants and it's the same for pilots, but open time is taking a look at your company's schedule, and these are all of the flights that don't have a crew assigned to it. So a good way for flight attendants and pilots to make a little bit of extra money was to pull up the open time trips to see what was out there. And if you had days off and there was a trip available on those days off, you can add that to your schedule from the open time pot, and then you would be the working crew. Open time was also a great place for you to swap out your trips. So as a flight attendant, if you don't like the city that crew scheduling was sending you to, or if they sent you on a trip and it wasn't enough hours, if you could swap day for day in open time, you could build your schedule to be something that you like. So open time really becomes your best friend once you are a line holder and you understand how bidding works and you understand that you can kind of swap out your schedule. So even if you are brand new to having a line and you're very junior in the base that you're at, you can get better trips through open time. And then also if you're a reserve flight attendant, and I don't know if you've ever watched my videos in the past, but I let you know it's very hard to make a living as a reserve flight attendant. But if you're trying to pick up more hours as a reserve flight attendant, you can go into open time, and if you have a chunk of days off and there's a trip available on those chunk of days off, you can actually bid for that trip and you'll have like some control of your schedule in that way, since it's something you're actually putting onto your schedule. So open time is where flight crew goes to find out what kind of trips are still out there that need to be crewed. All right, I just used this term in my last description, but my next up term is reserve. You can be a reserve pilot or you can be a reserve flight attendant, and that means just what it sounds like. You are an extra in the big picture. So I'm gonna speak for reserve flight attendants because that's what I have experience doing. I was a reserve flight attendant when I first started flying. Basically, that meant I was the most junior flight attendant in my base or at my company. And anytime a crew member got sick or a flight was delayed and the crew timed out, whatever the circumstances, anytime a flight attendant was needed, I was there and available for backup. So reserve does work different at all airlines. Like every flight attendant I've spoken with at every different major airline has a different reserve system. But when I first started, reserve was 24-hour periods. I would like to put 6 days in a row of being a reserve flight attendant on my schedule, and then having like 2 or 3 days off and then doing another 6-day chunk, just so I could kind of have a few days off in a row. But your phone can ring at any time. Crazy things happen in the airline industry, or just weather. It doesn't even need to be mechanicals. You know, bad weather can happen anywhere. For example, a crew was supposed to be flying back into your base and then working a flight from your base on, and now the weather pattern is not letting any airplanes take off or arrive. So that crew is stuck there, but you still need to work a flight to another destination. So reserve just means you are on call, you are needed when flight crew is needed. You never really know your schedule. It's hectic. You can't really make plans, but eventually it gets better. You won't be on reserve your entire flight attendant career, probably. There are some airlines where you're on there for years, but eventually you get off of reserve and then you get a better schedule. All right, the next term is blue juice. Blue juice is that fun blue toilet water that you see on airplanes. The blue juice is supposed to conceal smells and just look more pleasing to the eye when you're on an airplane. Yes, people think of this sort of stuff, but you can just call maintenance if you need more blue juice added. Sometimes they just throw a tab into the lavatory and then pour a bucket of water into the toilet, give it a flush, and your blue juice is ready to go. Sometimes they need to drain the entire system, add a bunch of water, and then put the blue tabs in. Blue juice is just fancy toilet water. All right, my next term is a commuter. If you've watched my videos, you know I used to be a commuter when I worked at the commercial airlines. I was a flight attendant who was based in Chicago, but I never lived in Chicago, so I would have to commute to Chicago. And I did that via airplane because I didn't live close enough to Chicago to drive there. So a commuter flight attendant or a commuter pilot is someone who is based in one city and they live in a different city, probably a different state. They rely on the airplanes to get to work, and then when their work trip is over, they rely on airplanes to get home from work also. So I'm sure you guys are well aware that there are commuters every day. You take the train into the city from the suburbs, or you take the ferry. There's a million different ways to do this. It's not anything new for anyone, but there are not a lot of jobs where you fly multiple times a week to work and then you fly multiple times a week back home. So that's what a commuter flight attendant is. That's what a commuter pilot is. The next term is Concours Shoes. You guys have already heard me talk about senior mamas and their love of wearing flat shoes. And listen, I'm a lover of wearing flat shoes. That's all I used to wear when I was a commercial flight attendant. I didn't have my Concours shoes and then my airplane shoes. But Concours shoes are the shoes that you are presenting yourself to the public in. They're supposed to be high heels. Each airline has a different standard of how high they should be, but they are just, hey, I'm out in public, I'm a flight attendant, I'm supposed to look fancy, here are my Concours shoes. And then when you're doing service on an airplane, it's not really that practical to be in high heels, so then you change into your service shoes, which you're allowed to wear flats during service on the plane. It's just for boarding and deplaning, you're supposed to be in your Concours shoes also. As a corporate flight attendant, I always wear flat shoes, and again, like I said, when I was a commercial flight attendant, I always wore flat shoes. I don't think it's good to be stuck in turbulence in high heels. Our days are very long and high heels are not comfortable, but I actually had to get a doctor's note saying that I was allowed to wear flat shoes all through my shift, because otherwise you could have been written up for not following uniform guidelines. So if you are new to aviation and you're like, oh, Jacqueline wore flat shoes all the time, I'm gonna wear flat shoes. No, I had a doctor's note. I had to cover my own butt in that situation. Have your doctors write you a note. I feel like most of them are more than willing to say it's not a good idea for you to be in high heels 16 hours a day, 5 days a week, walking through airports, walking on airplanes, walking through hotels, no good. If you are seated towards the front of the airplane near the forward galley, or you're seated towards the back of the airplane near the aft galley, you probably hear the term landing lips. So this means the flight is almost over. The flight attendants are gonna say goodbye to all of you passengers on board and then walk through the airport, and we wanna look as good as we can. So we put our landing lips on. The flight is almost done. We touch up our makeup. This way you can have a pleasant experience when you're saying goodbye to us. It sounds ridiculous. A lot of people judge flight attendants based on how they look, and the requirements from like 40 years ago are completely different from now. We no longer are required to weigh a certain amount. We're no longer required to be under a certain age. We're no longer required to be a certain height. So appearance-wise, things have become much more laid back in the flight attendant world, but we still like to put our landing lips on. We like to give you a smile at the end of the flight and just look nice and refreshed. I think I just used my next term, deplaning, and I can't even tell you how many times passengers have said deplaning is not a real word. We all use the word deplane. When you are getting off of the plane, you are deplaning. I know there are correct ways to say it in the English language. You're disembarking, whatever. That's just not what we say at the airlines. When you're getting off the plane, you are deplaning. That's what flight attendants say. That's what pilots say. That's what gate agents say. That is what people in the aviation industry say. Now, there are a lot of mechanics, airline mechanics, and pilots that generally use my next term is AC. It doesn't stand for air conditioner, even though maybe you hear mine right now because it's insanely hot where I live, but AC does not stand for air conditioner. It stands for aircraft. And flight attendants will talk about it just because when you're at the commercial airlines, you can be working on a Boeing, you can be working on an Airbus, you can be on a narrow body, you can be on a wide body. There's a lot of different aircrafts that you are trained to work on when you are a commercial flight attendant. You know, you get to the gate and you know that you're flying to California, but you might ask your crew, hey, what type of AC are we on today? That just means what type of aircraft are we on today? All right, this is a more, I guess, kind of fun layover term. It's bottle to throttle. So the FAA regulates how much alcohol a flight attendant or a pilot can consume when they're on a layover. Obviously, you don't want to drink and fly. For the pilots, it is a very bad idea for them to fly drunk or hungover or not feeling at 100%. But also for the flight attendants, I know you guys think we're just there to be sky waitresses, but if there's an emergency, the flight attendants are the ones who are in charge of safely evacuating passengers. So flight attendants also have to follow regulations of when they need to cut off an alcoholic beverage before their next flight. So this term is called bottle to throttle. Generally, there is 8 hours between when you hit the bottle to when the engines throttle, when you have to not be consuming any alcohol or when you have had to take your last sip of alcohol. Like I said, that's a general rule. Everybody metabolizes alcohol differently. I generally just don't even drink on layovers, so it's not anything that I need to worry about. But if I was having a glass of wine with dinner, I don't know why I use the wine example, I'm not a wine drinker. If I was to have like tequila or margarita at dinner, I know I give myself personally at least 12 hours in between, just because I'm a lightweight. Like I said, I don't really drink, so I never want to risk anything. All right, my number 15 term is a ferry flight. So we talked about deadheading crews, and that just means repositioning a crew member to get them to where you need to go. Well, the same thing happens with airplanes. And a ferry flight is basically just a repositioning of a flight to get the airplane where it needs to be. If I'm doing contract trips as a corporate flight attendant, a lot of times there are ferry flights involved. So our plane is housed somewhere, but our passengers live somewhere else. So we fly the plane empty to wherever the passengers are, and then that's where we start the trip. As commercial flight attendants, ferry flights are the best. You can sit in the flight deck during that time and you can watch how the pilots take off and land and talk to air traffic control, and you just have those beautiful views through the flight deck. And if those planes have in-flight entertainment systems, you can just like watch a movie the entire time. All of your work is already done for you when you're a commercial flight attendant once you get on the plane. If you're a corporate flight attendant and you have a ferry flight, you're usually working during the ferry flight. You're either putting food away or you're getting the cabin ready for your passengers and you're cleaning. And we detail everything, like you take Q-tips and you scrape in between the cracks on the paneling on the airplane. It's more fun to have a ferry flight as a commercial flight attendant, but it's still a lot of fun to have a ferry flight as a corporate flight attendant, because how often do you get to be on a private jet by yourself? My next term is a line or a line holder, and I tried really hard not to say this term when I was talking about being a reserve flight attendant. I just said eventually you will have a schedule as a more senior flight attendant. But in flight attendant speak, we call our schedules our lines. So when you graduate from reserve, you get your line, you get your schedule. You finally know where you're flying, when you're flying, who you're flying with, what kind of AC you're flying on, and all of that information. And a line holder is just a flight attendant who is senior enough to have a line. So it is a little bit different when you're a corporate flight attendant. I just have a schedule. So usually with my company, I know what I will be flying the month before I fly it. It is rare that we have pop-up trips, but pop-up trips do happen. And it's like being a reserve flight attendant in that sense. We have last minute trips come up that we have to prepare for, and we have to have food available and the airplane ready for our clients whenever they feel like they are ready to charter the airplane. So like I said, it's not often that I have a pop-up trip, but sometimes they do happen. All right, the next term is a PAX, a P-A-X. Sometimes flight attendants say the word PAX, sometimes pilots say the word PAX, or you typically see PAX when it's written out on a flight attendant report or the passenger shaming website when we talk about like terrible passenger behavior. But PAX is short for passenger. So when you're speaking, it doesn't really roll off the tongue as easy as some of these other acronyms do. You know, say you're delayed and you have to give a report to management about what the delay was. You just type out, we had a 15-minute delay. There were 45 PAX on an inbound AC that was running late, so we held the plane so those passengers wouldn't miss this flight. and then done. PAX is just an easier way of typing out passenger. The 17th term is turn. That was a mouthful for me to say. Turn is number 17. And I've talked to you guys about turns before, but it is when you are a flight attendant and you work a flight from your base to a city and you turn right back around and fly back to your base. On the corporate side, I used to refer to them as turns, but my pilots call turns out and backs. So you go out and you come back. I loved working turns. I'm actually gonna make a video all about why I like turns because I had some comments in a previous video questioning why a flight attendant would ever wanna work a turn. But I did enjoy them. I'm not saying that I like them more than layovers. It was just something that worked at a certain point in my life with my schedule. So a turn is you go out and you turn around and come right back home, or if you're corporate, it's called an out and back. Term number 19 is a UM. And you've probably heard this if you're a passenger, especially traveling during the holidays or during the summer. The flight attendant from the front of the plane will sometimes get on the PA system and say, hey, we're sending a UM back. UM stands for Unaccompanied Minor. And basically it is the airline's responsibility to babysit this child. Not always a child. I think you stop being a UM when you're 15, but it's the airline's responsibility to make sure that the UM is on the plane to the correct destination. And then when the plane lands, the UM stays with a flight attendant until they're either passed off to a gate agent to meet the parent or guardian for pickup, or until the parent or guardian comes to the gate and provides you with the proper documentation. So a lot of times flight attendants talk about UM season. That's in the summers. Children are either traveling to camps, or if they have a split parent household, they're flying back and forth to see one parent or the other parent. So in the summer, we are very busy with UMs as flight attendants, or during holidays, again, the split parent situation, or if the UM is going to see a grandparent or other relative, we generally have a lot of UMs on board. We're finally on the last term. We made it. This is something that I already said in this video, wide body or narrow body. And that has to do with the AC. What does that stand for again? Aircraft. So a wide body aircraft means it is an airplane that has 2 aisles. So you'll see 3 seats, an aisle, 4 seats, an aisle, and 3 seats. That is a wide airplane. A narrow body plane is just 1 aisle. They have 3 seats on one side and 3 seats on the other side. So generally, if you are a Southwest flyer, they fly 737s. Those are narrow body aircrafts. If you are flying international, you're gonna fly on those bigger aircrafts, larger Airbuses or larger Boeings, and those are gonna be wide body planes. So if you have more than 1 aisle on an airplane, you are in a wide body. And if you have only 1 aisle on an airplane, then you are on a narrow body airplane. So those are my 20 terms. I really hope that you guys learned something today. If you have ever heard a flight attendant or a pilot say a different term that I didn't cover here and you wanna know what it means, post it down below for me. I'm more than happy to give you an explanation. Also, if you guys have any other questions, comments, thoughts, or concerns, post them down below for me too. I will gladly get back to you. If you're looking for me on social media, my Twitter is @JackTravels, that is JAC Travels. And on Instagram, I am Jacqueline Travels, just like I am here on YouTube. Please make sure to leave me a thumbs up for this video and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Again, I am also going to put the link for my Teami promo code, the 25% off for you, down below. So you'll be able to just click on that link and place your order, or if you're already on the Teami website, you can just type in Jack Travels 25 and you'll save your 25%. So thank you again, Teami, for sponsoring this video, and thank you again to all of you who watched. I hope you learned something today. I hope it was fun, and I hope it gave you good insight into flight attendant life. Thank you again for watching. Bye.